Good morning and welcome to Parashat Mishpatim. The Torah begins this week's parasha with the concept of the Eved Ivri, the Jewish slave, to teach us that we need to really turn our experiences in Egypt into something positive. As Jews, we need to remember that we were once slaves and therefore we treat other people with the sensitivity that we wouldn't want others to feel oppressed. But at the same time, what the Torah does over here is something so nuanced and so beautiful. It expresses sensitivity towards the Jewish people in not mentioning slavery explicitly. In this week's parasha it says, Ki gerim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. You were strangers in the land of Egypt. And it's not until years later, in the book of Devarim, that we say the words, V'zacharta ki eved hayita b'Mitzrayim. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. And I think the application of this is that in many cultures, we find the phenomenon that those people that are oppressed, they react to their freedom by oppressing other people. In Judaism, we react by invoking those memories in a sensitive way to really ensure that other people around us, in our communities and in the world, don't suffer that same fate. Today we talk about this concept of never again. And today is the 27th of January, is Holocaust Memorial Day. And I think as Jews who went through Egypt and also who went through the Holocaust, we can be sensitive to the other oppressions that are happening in the world. And maybe one of the things we need to be mindful of is the following. There are many messages that go through my head on this specific day. But I think one of the overwhelming challenges we have as educators of the Holocaust, to be able to inspire and educate the next generation, to be able to build a better world for us and for our families and for our children and our grandchildren, is that when we are dealing with the murders of 6 million Jews or 9 million Jews, plus all the other undesirables in the eyes of the Third Reich, we're not dealing with abstract statistics. We're dealing with 6 million murders, where every single person had a name, hopes, dreams and aspirations, and a face. The concept of humanizing what took place is something which is very, very challenging. I learned this lesson very harshly about 6 years ago in the Ukraine. In the Ukraine, there's a place called Babi Yar, which is just outside Kiev. In September 1941, when the Germans, shortly after invading Russia, decided to go ahead and invade the Ukraine, the 200,000+ Jews that lived in the Ukraine, many fled, many were fighting at the front, and what remained at that time of the Jewish community was 65,000 Jews, mostly those people that couldn't flee, the infirm, the elderly, the weak, the sick, men, women and children who just didn't have the power and the energy to leave. On the 19th of September, the Bolsheviks blew up the German headquarters. And they used that to kick-start a pogrom that took place on the 29th and 30th of September that year, where in a ravine just outside Kiev, 33,771 Jews would be massacred in a mass grave in the space of 2 days. And as I stood at that site, researching future trips that we would be bringing there, it struck me really, really hard, and I felt as if I had been punched in my gut. Because I was brought up in the beautiful city of Gibraltar. And Gibraltar has a population of 34,000 people. And 33,771 is almost that number. And I envisioned, for the first time in my life, a sliver of what numbers meant. The concept of the city of Gibraltar being wiped out in 2 days, becoming a ghost town with no one left. That's essentially what took place in those 2 days in September 1941. And that's maybe why, as well, as Rabbi Lau once said, the reason that Anne Frank became such a popular book. The book of Anne Frank is a great book. It became a bestseller in the 1950s. But there's nothing in it that contains the horrors of the Holocaust. It doesn't contain anything to do with ghettos. It doesn't have anything to do with death marches, or death camps, or concentration camps. It is the eyes of what was taking place at the time through a young girl sitting in an attic in Amsterdam. And the reason he suggests it became so popular and sold millions of copies in every language is simply because it was about one person viewing the eyes of the Holocaust through one little girl, putting a face to what took place. On this day of Holocaust Memorial Day 2022, the days when the gates of Auschwitz were smashed open and we were liberated too late, but nonetheless liberated, we should be mindful and reflectful that when we think about those days and being appreciative of the fact that we did have allies that eventually came to our rescue, albeit too late, at the same time we have to be mindful that we didn't just lose random abstract statistics. We lost people who had names and faces and hopes and dreams and aspirations. to be able to put a human touch and a human face to the tragedy that befell our people, to really ensure that those words never again are not just a bumper sticker, but by remembering, Zachor, the duty of remembrance itself, and understanding that never again is only couple would never forget, with a call to action to make sure that we always stand up against racism, bigotry, hatred, and anti-Semitism wherever it stands, and wherever it is. Here at Tzon should be Hashem's will, that the world, the Jewish world, and the entire world shall only have peace and love and harmony in the future. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.